2 minutes, 1 minute, maybe 1 minute more.
Alors, après votre introduction, je demande qu'on passe les images.
The video?
Oui.
I will ask for the video.
You.
I will.
D'accord, vous demandez après avoir parlé.
Après Madame Lejeune.
Après, si vous voulez. Comme vous voulez. C'est prêt, de toute façon.
At the beginning of your speech.
Okay.
At the beginning. Okay. Or before you speak?
Non, before Madame Lejeune.
Ah, before Madame Lejeune.
Yes. Et oui, parce que comme ça on voit l'image. We can see the picture of Jerome Lejeune.
Ah, okay. So you want the video now, after the introduction?
Yes, perhaps.
Okay. Okay.
You think it's good?
As you like.
C'est mieux.
Buongiorno a tutti, benvenuti all'incontro.
Welcome everybody, welcome to the presentation of the exhibition What is Man? So much so that you have to look after him. This is the story of Jerome Lejeune, a geneticist, a great doctor as well, and a person who was profoundly Christian. The reason why this person, this doctor, researcher, who is not well known to the general public, the reason why this person fascinates most people that he met, and in the meeting, indeed, you can see how many young people are going to see the exhibition. This poses a question immediately. Why is Jerome Lejeune so fascinating for people? What did he do? Very briefly, his journey is this. As a young man, he became a member of a genetic laboratory directed by Professor Lejeune. In the laboratory, cytogenetic techniques, which were very new, were adopted, and he was able to discover the cause of the Down syndrome, the presence of an excess number of chromosome 21, on chromosome 21. And he also therefore discovered the cause after that of many other chromosomal diseases. And this should have opened up the road to scientific success of great standing. But in fact, as a man, and given his faith, he defended the position of not aborting Down syndrome, which went against the scientific world. And this meant that he was isolated. The scientific community isolated him. They cut off his finances. He never, in fact, desisted from his position of defending Down syndrome people, his faith and his human attitude. And what we ask our speakers today is to tell us what is so fascinating about this position and what it tells us today. We're going to speak about this today with Madame Birthe Bringsted Lejeune, Mr. Dr. Lejeune's wife. Dr. Jean-Marie Méné, who is the president of the Lejeune Foundation. and Professor Carasuare, who is a professor of the University of Milan and the curator of the exhibition. Before I give the floor to the three speakers, I would like to ask, please, for a short video to be projected and screened. This will show the life and work of Jerome Lejeune.
Vous qui êtes
You who are for the family, we in fact go against you. We will say that you are obsolete, that you in fact prevent the progress of science, and the flag of experimental tyranny will be raised against you. One will say that you are trying to muffle science with an obsolete morality. And I say to you, do not be frightened. You, in fact, transmit the words of life.
Eh bien, il nous reste
And wisdom remains, and wisdom is eternal, except man has not invented this. And this wisdom is summed up in one sentence, which explains everything and responds to everything, will tell you exactly what you must and must not do. And this is a very simple sentence. It is our master who taught us this. It's what you have done. Or those, in fact, that what you have done through my hands.
Madame
Madame Lejeune, the floor to you. Yes, thank you. I greet you all. And it's with a great deal of emotion that I find myself here for the third time, because a very, very long time ago, I came twice, 2 years running with my husband. And last year with my daughter Clara, who will tell you about the story of her father. This year, for me, this is the first time that I take the floor before you, and I have so many things to tell you. But there are so many things that are happening that are important in the world. We have to defend certain values, however, and this is not really up to me, and that is why I, in fact, have brought with me the president of our foundation. And he's going to talk about the new measures which are underway and which are a great danger for the future of humanity. And after that, I'd answer your questions, but I prefer that it be the president of the foundation, Jean-Marie Méné, to talk to you about this foundation.
Je voudrais commencer.
I'd like to start by recalling a personal Italian memory that I have. A couple of decades ago, just after my wedding, I was able to go to Rome. And at the same time as Professor and Madame Lejeune were there. And Jerome Lejeune, in fact, was scheduled to meet the Holy Father. And we learned on the eve of his meeting that we also would have the luck and be able to accompany him the next day to the Mass with the Holy Father. We were young newlyweds, and we're very enthusiastic to be a part of this Mass of the Holy Father. So, in fact, we set 3 alarm clocks to be sure to wake up on time and to be at the Bronze Gate at 7 in the morning. And we discovered the Holy Father, who was praying like a block of prayers. And then the Mass started, and I was, in fact, I had my head in the heavens and my feet were no longer touching the ground. And my wife suddenly became nauseous. And therefore the little Polish nuns took hold of her and led her to the Holy Father's bathroom. And then the Mass continued. And at the end, we were able to go to the library where the Holy Father said a little something to everybody and gave a rosary to everybody with a photograph. And at that point, Jerome Lejeune took his daughter by her shoulder, his daughter, who is my wife, and presented her to the Holy Father. And Jerome Lejeune said, "You have before you, Holy Father, 3 generations of Lejeune." And Jerome Lejeune and the Holy Father had understood that if my wife had felt nauseous before, it was because she was expecting a baby. And the Holy Father said, all the family must come and have lunch with me. But I'd like to just stay with that sentence that Jerome Lejeune said, "You have before you 3 generations." It was another way, perhaps, for Jerome Lejeune to deliver the message that he always held out throughout his life. Starting at the beginning, there's a message. The message is life, and the message is in life. And if this message is a human message, if it is human, well, then life is a human life. This is the only message that Jerome Lejeune, in fact, issued. He said it was, in fact, it was a poor paraphrase of a text of St. John, but it was a way for him to show that on his side, too, in his intelligence and his faith, were 2 paths that led to the same truth. And to be able to say this with the same word and with the language of intelligence, but also the language of faith, is the mark of genius or of holiness, or perhaps of both. So how come today we no longer really know who man is? Jerome Lejeune said the following: while the progress of science, scientific progress every day reveals a new secret of the day, of science and life every day, people want us to believe that we know less and less what is a member of our species, or what a member of our species is. And it's true that the example of a person suffering from trisomy 21 is a particularly exemplary case. Trisomy 21 is the pathology whose cause Jerome Lejeune had found, is an icon of weakness, but also a scapegoat symbol, an innocent scapegoat, but also an example of civilization. Several current affairs, in fact, today prove this. The first fact, you know that in the last couple of days, a young Christian Pakistani girl who is said to be suffering from trisomy 21 is currently in prison under the accusation of blaspheming. The police arrested her. She's called Rimsha, and she is going to be judged after she comes out of prison. There have been threats to kill her. Now, throughout the world, there's an enormous amount of passion aroused about this, and this seems reinforced by the fact that this young girl apparently is suffering from trisomy 21. But it's very odd, because in fact you have the impression that it would be even more unjust to punish a person who suffers from intellectual deficiency and who is not completely in possession of his faculties, and this crime would be doubled because of this. But at the same time, there's a paradox when we see that the life of a person with trisomy 21 moves us more in Pakistan than it does in Europe, where everything is organized to the contrary, so that this population no longer can be born. The second current affairs fact, you've probably read in the newspaper yesterday or this morning, that in Germany and Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Austria, and the citizens of these countries have a new prenatal screening test for trisomy 21 available. And this new test, in fact, will be available and marketable throughout Europe, apparently. In fact, this will be a revolution, a technical revolution, which is not really a moral or scientific or medical revolution, however. You know that up to now, the screening of trisomy 21 relies on serum markers, and then you had to have an ultrasound after that, and after that, very often, you had to have amniocentesis, so a series of long examinations, complicated examinations, which aren't always 100% sure, had to be carried out, and also, on top of that, it led to the abortion of healthy embryos because of the technique itself. That's the past. That's the situation that we had up to now. These new tests are going to be much simpler. All you have to do is take a blood sample, so it's non-invasive, the test. You take the blood of the pregnant woman, and you can see in the woman's blood the genome of the child in her womb. And immediately you can diagnose directly trisomy 21. That will be a very early diagnosis, therefore. It will be very sure and certain, and it will be without risk, because the risk of amniocentesis and so on is not there. So all the publicity is to show that this is an extraordinary technical advance which has been made. But this introduces a confusion, however, because from a technical point of view, it is interesting. This development is interesting, but if this development, in fact, is translated simply in the making available of a new test which will allow the wiping out of the population of trisomy 21 children, that's a very bad piece of news, because we are told if you do this test, there will be no longer any healthy embryos that will be destroyed by amniocentesis. But it's terrible, in fact, to put it that way. It means that it's more serious to kill a normal embryo than to kill an abnormal embryo. That means introducing a distinction and selecting, and to judge that person whose life is not worthy of being lived. And we're also told that it's reliable, 100% reliable, and we know that 96% of the screened trisomy 21 embryos are aborted. So what do we want to do? We want to add another 5% and eliminate the 5% that slip through the net. In fact, there's a great deal of money behind all this affair, because the diagnostics of trisomy 21, of course, concerns every woman, but it concerns also humanity. And there are considerable profits at stake for the pharmaceutical laboratories developing it. And this test, used in the general population systematically for all pregnant women, is of no medical interest or usefulness. We are told that it is to pick up the trisomy child, but already, in fact, I know that most of the trisomy screened embryos are, in fact, aborted. So that just means that you want to pick up the very few remaining. And so there's great encouragement on the part of the media, the public opinion, laboratories, and the medical circles. There's a great push to use these texts and to, therefore, to be able to get rid of trisomy 21, getting rid of the people who are affected by trisomy 21. The third current affairs fact is a question which is currently before the European Court of Human Rights. This case is a mother and her trisomy daughter, and they claim that the mother claims that she wasn't able to use screening methods which would have allowed her to pick up the trisomy 21 of her daughter and eventually abort. She went before the courts of her country, and which is Latvia, and she went through the whole system, and now she has appealed to the European Court of Human Rights. So there's a considerable risk that the European Court of Human Rights may decide that the possibility of having prenatal screening of trisomy 21, that it is a right. And if this is not satisfied, you can take this question to court. And it's paradoxical to see that the European Court of Human Rights, which was born after the war, which was founded after the war, and after the trial of the Nuremberg trials, that this court will be led to develop this case law, which is so typical of genetics. This would be a very severe ruling. It's not yet been taken, but it would be a very, very grave decision, because, in fact, it would become part and parcel of the case law of all the European countries. So you can say, well, what link do all these current affairs have to do with Jerome Lejeune and his work? Nothing that touches us and trisomy 21 is, in fact, indifferent to us and leaves us indifferent, because it is a marker of what a society is doing to remain a civil society. At the origin of all these attitudes of rejection and trying to get rid of trisomy 21 people, there are many things. There's the development of techno-science, there's the moral relativity, there is the legalization also of medicine that we see. These are all the causes. And the Jerome Lejeune Foundation does not claim, nor does it have the means to fight against all these things, but it does have objectives against which it fights against certain things, and we follow in the path, in this sense, of its founder, Jerome Lejeune. We have three things. First of all, we want to answer the question that has always been given a wrong answer. We are told we can do nothing for the people with intellectual deficiency. We can do nothing for people with trisomy 21, but that's wrong. And we will give proof of this, and we do give proof of this every day through the very many consultations that we have at the foundation every day. We have 5,000 patients of all ages, and we have developed expertise and skills in diagnostics. You can't just simply say this person has trisomy 21. You have to be able to diagnose excessive handicaps and to, in fact, give remedies to the handicaps that then come with trisomy 21 and to help them, these patients. We know, for example, how to anticipate the question of leukemia, which are more frequent in trisomy 21 patients, and leukemia can be healed, especially if you catch it in time. There are many added affections and which can be treated. There are skin, swallowing, and also sight problems, also problems of gait, that all can be treated. We can improve many, many things, and a great deal of progress has been made in the provision of care of trisomy 21 patients in the last 10, 15 years. We see, in fact, trisomy 21 patients that can speak quite happily by themselves, and they feel that they can, in fact, deliver a message which is important, and that's new. Also, the speech therapy has improved. 15, 20 years ago, we didn't allow trisomy 21 patients to speak. The progress made allows us to give them the floor, as it were, and allow them to speak, and they have things to tell us. Also, we have the possibility of enriching clinical research, and this is what we do to help researchers, because clinicians see in their medical visits and observe certain facts, and they can indicate to researchers the area in which research should go. And that's the second mission of the foundation, to answer that second question. Can we one day find a treatment to attenuate or, in fact, get trisomy 21 to, in fact, be wiped out? Usually, the society says, no, you can never do anything about that. And that's why it has developed this generalized screening methods. Here, too, we give proof that research carried out and financed by the foundation has allowed the progress to be made. And we have done many things and progress thanks to the financing. We have allowed many teams working on trisomy 21 to make progress in with regard to treat these people who are suffering from this mental retardation, and one day to surmount this and to make these people autonomous. And researchers today tell us that is possible. That's the first victory. 15 years ago, the researchers didn't say it was possible. Today, however, most researchers in the area say, yes, it's possible. They're not saying it's easy. They're not saying it's for tomorrow, and a miracle won't appear, certainly, but they are saying that we one day will be able to overcome mental retardation. So that's a third victory to, in fact, have overcome the defeatism of researchers. And there are many clinical trials ongoing, both inside the foundation and outside of the foundation, because we have the luck to have many patients with trisomy 21. So this is an added opportunity of being able to allow them to benefit from these drug trials. And there are two types of approaches in the research that we are conducting. On the one hand, we're trying to act on the genotype to regulate or modulate the overexpression of the genes, which causes trisomy 21 and the additional chromosome that's there. In other words, to regulate the genetic expression. And the other approach is to act on the phenotype, in other words, directly at the level of the brain. And especially we take action with regard to the dysfunctions of the cerebral neurotransmitters. So you work on the connections within the brain through drugs. That you don't act on the genome, but you manipulate parts of the brain which transmit signals, and there are problems there with trisomy 21. These are the two main research approaches, and there are several other in between these two, several other approaches. The third step of the foundation, after providing care and research, the third thing is to see whether the eradication of a sick patient population, in fact, is compatible with our society and with medical and scientific development. And we, of course, say no. 20 years ago, Jerome Lejeune said that the true danger is in man, in the increasingly worrying imbalance between his power in science that grows every day and his wisdom, which seems to regress equally. And things seem to be worsening because in the race between technoscience and business, it's technoscience that wins the day. Perhaps it won't win the day totally, but in the short term and in the immediate future, technical and scientific approaches seem to hold sway. And that, in fact, is a false conclusion. Jerome Lejeune also said, a society that gives itself the right to experiment with embryos, to kill a fetus in uterus in the womb of a woman who doesn't want to take on her responsibilities, and who at the same time decides to, the science which decides to allow old women to have children, is a society which has gone delirious. And he said this 20-odd years ago. The only thing that's changed is that the transgressions that Jerome Lejeune criticized 20 years ago, well, many of these transgressions or actions were illegal. Now they have become legal. And the advent of bioethics has meant that many of these other interventions have become legal. And this is what is explained in the encyclical Evangelium Vitae for 1995. In fact, these new attacks against life have lost their character as crimes to become part and parcel of the rights of man. And there's therefore confusion between good and evil, and the life of society is profoundly affected as a result. That is why we pursue our defense of life, which goes hand in hand with research to try and treat, and medicine to try and give succor to the people who are suffering from mental retardation. These are the poor people of our society, as Jean Paul II said in the Evangelium Vitae. And the start of the case for the beatification of Jerome Lejeune, and you saw some pictures of him, this is an important event, and it's on this occasion, and indeed before the case was opened, when Jerome Lejeune died, Jean Paul II proposed that Lejeune be held up as a lay Christian, the model of a lay Christian who has always been able to use his science for the true good of man, and only for the true good of man. And John Paul added that this was also somebody who contradicted the lie that kills, but that he was also a bearer of hope. And therefore, this is an invitation to imitate, without fear of the pressure and ostracism you may encounter, to imitate the integral personality of and life of Jerome Lejeune, And in fact, this was a life which was integral. He was a man who followed his own way and his own faith. He was coherent in his being. And it's this coherence that you invite, and we are invited to carry forward and to imitate. And what the Jerome Lejeune Foundation, in fact, helps and tries to do. The task is immense, but also immense is the hope. Thank you for your attention.
Grazie, Dottor Méné.
Thank you, Dr. Méné. Now, Carlo, I'd like to give you the floor to give us a closer view of the life of Jerome Lejeune. Let's hope that these slides will work. Now, this is the title of the exhibition that you see at the entrance, and you see also in the catalogue. What is man, so much so that you remember him? This was the question that we tried to answer, and we've tried to look into this question. Who is this man, so much so that you have to remember him? And we tried to do this through the experience and the testimony of Jerome Lejeune, because we thought that his life was an answer to this question, what is man, so much that we must remember him. And if you see the exhibition, I'm not going to describe it because I hope you go see it, but in the third and fourth panel, there is his biography, and in the top we see a servant of God, Jerome Lejeune, is servant of God because the cause for his beatification has been started. The case for this has been started. And it says, I, Jerome, before all peoples, assert that every human being is a person. And this is already an answer to that question, what is man? Man is a person. And what we have to really try and understand, and what we try to do in the exhibition, is what is a person? What did Jerome Lejeune mean when he said man is a person? What is a man? It's a person. And that is the thread running through the exhibition. This exhibition has been staged in collaboration with the foundation and Lejeune and a group of friends. We are all scientific researchers, by the way, and we've always been very enthusiastic and wanting to understand what moves the researcher. I mean, he was a geneticist, he was a researcher. We wanted to find out what moved him. And what we were really struck by immediately was that he was incredibly optimistic. And this is important. This one sentence really struck me that he said. He says, we will find, we can't not find it. It's less arduous than going to the moon. It might seem like that now, but it didn't seem like that then. What were they trying to find? It was the cause of the Down system and a therapy. So he was incredibly optimistic. And we wondered, I mean, where does this optimism, this confidence come from in a researcher like this? Because that's fundamental. Where does the optimism of a researcher come from? The confidence that he will understand. This is a sentence of St. Thomas of Aquinas. He says, truth is the agreement between reason and reality, not the agreement between reason with reality, but the agreement between reason and the reality of our world, the universe, that our reason and the reality understand each other. We're made of the same music, as it were. This is the experience that a researcher makes, which, and in fact, the true proof of the truth of the fact that it is the accord between our reason and reality. And this is what causes the wonder. And the wonder also is that we can ask questions. And any of you who have taught know that if a boy understands nothing of what you're telling him, he can't ask questions. But if you can put questions, it means something you've understood. And in fact, we therefore are on the same wavelength, as it were, with reality. And that's a sign that allows us to ask ourselves, well, how come we can succeed in having a consensus and being in tune with this reality? And whatever the scientists, researcher, astrophysicist or whatever, that means that there is something there. This is, I think, what is the basis of any scientific research. So there's this opening up and the questioning that any scientist has, and it is a first opening up to the infinite, I think. And what the experience of Jerome Lejeune is, I think, it's just this opening up to the infinite. I think this is the key. And then there was a second theme which struck us at a certain point, and you will see this in one of the panels. Clara says that my father was a doctor right up to the end, right up to the his soul. It meant that he had the hope of being in some way finding something good for these patients with trisomy 21. To find a therapy, if it wasn't a therapy, something that would at least improve their performance or whatever. In other words, he had a hope.
Hope for positive action on people like this. But then we asked ourselves, clearly, if a man does not have this hope of doing something good, then maybe he'd better change his job. Because every morning a doctor wakes up and goes to hospital, this must be his mission. Where does this hope rely on? It's not just an illusion, it's a hope that rests on confidence, the confidence that I mentioned before. Maybe not me, but my successors or even another generation will do something good. This is essential. This is most important, and this tells us about two things which are also expressed in the exhibition. A scientific researcher or a researcher of any kind is optimistic because he or she knows that there will be an answer to this question. Human geneticists, in particular, are not irresponsible. They have to try and see how to have all this bear fruits. At some point in the exhibition, you have the interesting discovery of trisomy 21. Once you discover that there is a supernumerary chromosome, you wonder, why is it that an extra chromosome can cause all these problems? Let's see if we can find an explanation to be followed by a therapeutic project. In the exhibition, you will see the explanation of the coordination of metabolism and so on and so forth. And after the discovery, he asked himself, let's see what we can do. He still had hope that a therapeutic solution could be found. I think it's a very good lesson for everybody, not just physicians. Well, we were especially struck by the third point, which is a basic issue. At some point, when he realizes that his discovery allows for prenatal diagnosis, instead of opening up or instead of seeing a therapeutic solution only, he sees an alternative. He showed responsibility in this respect and took a very strong public position. He said, the problem is to kill or not to kill. What shall we do? That's where the problem lies. We have asked ourselves, why is it that he decided to take this position in favor of life? It's an important issue. He often stated that the Hippocrates swearing is very important. The oath of Hippocrates is very important. It's been so for many years for doctors, but I'm sure it's not just about Hippocrates' oath. There must be something deeper in all this. At some point, he said something which is very simple. We need to see reality as it is. What is that embryo? Is it a cluster of cells or a human being? You have to decide. What is that embryo? Is it a cluster of cells or a human being? So he said, in the name of truth, please tell me what it is. The answer is just one. Science does not have many certainties, but some are certain. For example, that the Earth is round. The fact that that embryo is a human being is sure. It's certain. All scientists know this. It's a human being. It's a point of non-return in science. You may find many other explanations, but this is a fact. What is man? Every human being is a person in front of God and the other human beings. It's not enough to say it's a person. Very often men killed other human beings because they were undesired. So it's not the first time. We need to understand, to deeply understand what being a human being means. It's a core issue. We need to understand what he meant when he referred to the embryo as a person, as a human being. At some point in Florence, he stated, an optimistic scientist is in line with reality because man was created like his creator. This is the important point. When he says that the human being is made like the creator, this means that the value of the human being comes from the creator that wanted this human being. Either we go back to the history of life and the beginning of history, or we can't explain this. Benedict XVI, in his message to the meeting in Rimini, said we have to reconsider the word creation and we as creatures. This is very important because it all depends on this. We need to fully define what a human being is. Is it the product of chance or the creation of a good creator? Man does not exist out of necessity. The whole history of life on Earth is full of upheavals and disasters. We know this. We might not be here today, and yet we are. You know, there are chance and necessity. If it was just because of chance, we would not be here. If we accept the hypothesis that we simply exist by chance, then, you know, if my neighbor is useful to me, then fine, otherwise I don't care. Everyone would have a certain value simply because of what we are worth. Lejeune says that the cost of having all these patients with trisomy 21 is high, but you have to pay this price to be human beings as such. We are wanted by a good creator, and we are the image of our creator who created us in his own image. If we see a painting, the painting of a landscape, we immediately think that the painter had seen this landscape before painting it. The same is true for the creator who created us in his own image, and we need to establish a relationship with him. When there was the canonization and blessing ceremony in Notre Dame, there was a mass afterwards and the proclamation of intentions. The last boy who took the floor said, "We believe in you, God, our creator who loves life." You know, that boy who said, "We praise you, Lord, who gave us life and created us," is very important. We human beings want to establish a friendly relationship with the Creator, the good Creator that gave us life. You know, this is what impressed us most when preparing this exhibition. First of all, I would like to thank the Lejeune Foundation for helping us organize the exhibition, especially Ludovic. She was impeccable. And then the other curator, Marco Bergantini, and all the boys and girls that helped us. It was an excellent experience, and also thanks to my wife for bearing with me for 6 months. Thank you.
Grazie Carlo. Oggi abbiamo fatto un incontro.
Thank you very much. Today we met a fascinating person. Why so fascinating? Because of his way of looking at reality and life, I think. With his own life, he documented that the persons are not determined by their genome or chromosomes, but by the relation with the infinite. This is true, as you can see in the exhibition. If you watch the video, you see the down boy that prays God, who gave him life. This is the stature of Lejeune. He was aware of this, and he devoted his whole life as a researcher and physician to look for a therapy for these people. As a physician, he never thought that a Down syndrome diagnosis should lead to abortion, but therapy. As Carlo said, maybe this therapy will come in 10 years' time or maybe even 20, but we'll get there. He was also very brave. He continued affirming the individual's dignity even when this could represent a danger to his career. He always stated the truth. We have to do with a true man. That's why John Paul II called him my friend. Thank you.
Abbiamo ancora qualche minuto, quindi se ci fosse...
We have a couple more minutes, so if there are any questions, you can put them.
Prego.
Beh, preferivo parlare Lo può fare anche da qua?
No, vabbè, grazie. No, io sono professore di citologia all'Università di Ancona.
I'm a professor of cytology at the University of Ancona. I'm particularly concerned with molecular evolution. I'm not here to talk about my research. Let me simply bring you my testimony as to how a person with a genetic syndrome can improve. One of our students had Klinefelter's syndrome, which in some respect is even worse than Down syndrome. He can't speak, but he uses the PC and can read, thanks to the great involvement of his mother and all his colleagues. Last year, he graduated in biological sciences with a semi-experimental thesis. I just wanted to say that even people with these syndromes can do great things. Thank you. It's a testimony.
Funziona? Se posso fare un commento.
Just a comment to what our friend said. This further shows that we're not defined by our genes, but by our life and the relationships that we establish throughout our life. This is what defines a human being, not just men, but also other human beings, bacteria, and so on and so forth. It's our history that determines us. That's why we are unique, unrepeatable, and unforeseeable, because who is it that can tell us what will happen to each one of us? Science doesn't give us meaningful answers. It just gives us a sort of portrait where the traits become clearer and clearer. What is evident is that we are in relation with the Creator that wanted us to be here.
Buongiorno, volevo fare una domanda. Io ho una sorella.
My question, I have an autistic sister. She's very severe. A person with Down syndrome is not one that can improve. I mean, a person born with a disability does not necessarily improve. That's what I mean. In our society, many diseases can be cured with new therapies. Why is it that in our society what can be cured is eliminated? there are no observations on the treatment choice. Another point, if we eliminate what is faulty, defective in reality, then medicine would die out because it's got nothing to treat anymore.
È molto vero che
It is absolutely true that sometimes cure is not given privilege to. The funny thing is that most of the diseases we have to do now are chronic diseases where treatment and cure are essential. Many diseases in modern society, diabetes, hypertension, tumors, are diseases from which you can't heal, at least in the majority of cases. The role of medicine is not healing, but accompanying the diseased people, trying to improve their lives as much as possible. Eliminating diseased people is absolutely in contradiction with medicine, also modern medicine.
Il microfono. Allô?
no?
Dagli il tuo.
Je ne sais pas si on peut traduire en même temps. Jérôme Lejeune avait une jolie forme.
Jerome Lejeune had a very nice formula and a very nice statement. He said, when nature condemns, the role of medicine is not the life sentence, but a way of changing the punishment. We still have time for another question. I'm a member of CORDOWN, which is the coordinating entity for all associations dealing with Down syndrome in Italy. Thank you for the invitation to coming to this meeting. I'm a physician and I have a testimony to bring to this audience. It is true that people with Down syndrome show who the human being really is. There are many stereotypes in the mind of those that don't know these people and think they're all the same. But those that live with these people in reality realize that these stereotypes are not true. We work with these individuals and realize that they're all unique. Each person is rather unique. Now, a message and a question to you. I'm a physician. Over the years, I discovered that perhaps research is moving on very slowly from the medical side. I've seen more progress in educational sciences. What I mean is that great progress was made with these individuals thanks to the work of educators. My question is, synergy between treating the person by the physician and treating these individuals with an educational approach can be beneficial to subjects with Down syndrome and mankind in general. Thank you very much. These days, and even before, when there were rumors that this exhibition was about to be organized, we got input from many people throughout Italy because they wanted to establish synergy with many entities dealing with Down syndrome. The idea was can't we organize this, can't we use this event to sort of network all those that have to do with Down syndrome, helping the families, etc.? I think that the Lejeune Foundation is already doing a lot in this respect. I discovered your association, but there are many more. So there is a board at the site of the exhibition where you can leave your name and address so that we can create a network, see what the research developments are, and keep continuously updated. Would you like to give an answer on the medical side? Yes, the lady who asked the question is right. We often believe that there is a dichotomy between those that treat trisomy 21 and others. Initially, it was said it's just a question of education and social approach for treating this disease, not so much scientific or medical. Of course, everything contributes to improving the cognitive performance of these individuals and the way they feel comfortable in society. All these activities have to be performed appropriately. We see extraordinary techniques being applied at the foundation level. This is most fruitful, and this is done in synergy with the scientific and medical progress in the future. Everything goes hand in hand. The worst thing is to oppose knowledge. Instead, you have to link everything, all disciplines. Seeing the diseased person from above, you can only do so if you love the diseased individuals. You can't oppose one discipline to the other. If you love a person with trisomy 21, you have to look upon him or her with great love. That's the only way of making progress. Thank you. Madame Lejeune, please conclude the session. Certainly, my husband, Jerome, was very humble. And this attribute of his would make him suffer seeing all this agitation around his name. I hope you will leave this room in the idea that there are values to defend. This is the best thing you can do for the disabled and for all mankind. Thank you for coming in such a high number this afternoon. I'm really happy and I feel at home. Thank you.